were some things that maybe surprised you, or are conceptions that maybe changed about how data science is done in the real world once you got that exposure?
I think one of the things that surprises me and like still recently is just like how there really isn't one way or standard ways to do a lot of things. You see that even just like work streams or like working pipelines, everyone does things differently. How they ingest their data, how they do processing, the types of tools they use, the types of models they might implement. I mean, there is some consistency in terms of like, okay, like, you know, there's ETL and things like that, but like every company does it a different way. And then there's like a lot of not really perfect ways to do it. But maybe there isn't like a best way. Like even at LinkedIn, we suffer from like, you know, we have such a big infrastructure and we have solutions and stuff that we implement, but like you still run into tooling issues and things like that. So I think that was one of the big surprises. I thought like, oh, everything's figured out and it's clean. You can just go in and get the data you need and then like run whatever analysis or modeling you have to do. But it's not that simple. You spend a lot of time just trying to get the data you need. I think that was one of the biggest surprises for me, because I just assumed coming from academia where everything's kind of a mess, like things would be a little bit more defined in industry, but not necessarily so.
Did you find the tools themselves change too? Because like between, I guess, the time that you did Insight, then you went through, I guess you went through Schooled, and I think there might have been one other company, and then you got to LinkedIn. So you've seen three different companies from the inside, and across a time when the field of data science itself has changed so much. Like, what are some of the biggest changes that you've seen in the industry between the beginning of your journey and now?
So I would say probably one of the biggest things that I've kind of like gotten to experience more firsthand is the evolution of like Spark and how Spark is being used across industry. So when I think like when I was in Insight, it was a lot of talk was about like Hadoop and all those other Apache products and Hive and Pig for processing data. And of course, you know, I mean, I wasn't super knowledgeable on what all that was at the time. And then when I went to my startup, I actually started doing some research into those tools and what would work for us. We had like, I would say more of a medium data problem where like things could only, we were putting things in Postgres and like things were getting too big, but it turned out we weren't quite big enough for Hadoop. And then like, you know, started learning about Spark. I mean, I've heard the term before. And at the time, like, I was able to convince the company to buy a subscription to Databricks. So we started using that. And even then, like, between the entire time I was using it, seeing how the language evolved in different versions has changed a lot. The machine learning tools have evolved a lot. And I think adoption is kind of grown. Like, so at LinkedIn, we are now like just starting to use Spark across the data science team. And it's kind of like this effort to like get people to learn the tools and things like that. So that's where I've had a little bit of an advantage since I've came in already with some working knowledge of how it works and things like that. So that's been one of the biggest, like, I think tooling changes. And we're also like, I mean, I think it used to be, at LinkedIn, it used to be primarily like Pig and Hive. I mean, we still use Hive, but like nobody codes them anymore.
This is kind of really interesting because it mirrors some of the shifts that it seems the market's going towards as well, in terms of data scientists becoming more and more in some ways more and more like engineers, where a lot of the engineering, like now it's time to really make the rubber meet the road and serve people at scale and so on. And yet, one of the things I think I've noticed with people who are trying to break in is they're still kind of learning the basic tools like scikit-learn, pandas, Jupyter notebooks. Very few people start learning Spark when they're trying to break in. Do you think that Spark is something that people should pick up before they enter industry, or is that something you can learn kind of on the fly?